Well, let me ask you this then. For journalists who are in school, for people who think they were interested in journalism, obviously, like working as a stringer in your college town or going and doing the police desk at Tuscaloosa Times for 3 years before you go to the Kansas City Star, before you go to the Tribune, that doesn't exist anymore, at least for 99% of people. I mean, now you graduate from journalism school or you think you want to write. Do you just start a blog? Do you figure out what it is you want to write about and you just write about it? Is that the new paying your
That's what I would
dues?
recommend.
Yeah.
That's honestly what I would recommend. But that's not always so easy. It's not even so much the work easy or starting the blog that's not easy. It's actually knowing what it is you want to write about. We have students come out from the U of I every year, and then I go back and I talk to classes, and that's just like with everything else in the world, the most important thing is knowing what you want to do. And if you don't know that, starting a blog, it can help because it will help you get better and it will help you become a better writer and it'll help you figure stuff out in a lot of ways. But no one is going to I was thinking of Life's a Loser columns I used to write. Back when I was just trying to find my voice. That's what I was trying to do with those columns. I never actually thought, wow, the New York Times is going to buy my Life as a Loser column and hear me complain about my cat. I knew that wasn't going to be the case. I just wanted to get better. Mm-hmm. And I knew I knew I wanted to write, so I just poured all my energy into that. Now you have to find out what you want to write about. You have to figure out what exactly that thing is so you can do it in a way that no one else is doing it, and then this larger company can come in and say, hey, I like what you're doing. I would like to buy it. Mm-hmm. And that's young journalists have to be entrepreneurs, really, is probably the best way to think about it. They're better off, they have to know the basic skills of reporting, which is why I think journalism school still matters. And the best ones are adjusting to this reality rather than still having you do front page newspaper design. But I think that's the most important thing that's what I would recommend. Not so much just starting a blog, but finding out what it is that you care about and what you want to write about. And if you're lucky, what you want to write about are something that there is plenty of a market for. If you want to be, for crying out loud, there need to be more police reporters. Nobody wants to be a police reporter. It's not glamorous, but that's what they need. Those spots are open everywhere. Those hardcore reporting skills, they're not, those are still quite rare. And just because the usual kind of way that this system was set up before, it's not like that anymore, doesn't mean that being a skilled reporter is not rewarded.
Let me ask you, I don't want to, we keep talking about blogs and Deadspin, and obviously you've moved on from that a little bit in your career, but you're always going to be tied to it, partially because you created one of the biggest blogs, at least for sports in the world, and partially because of the Bissinger piece. I read the article in GQ about AJ Delario, the editor of Deadspin, and what struck me is you mentioned that you weren't maybe entirely keen about the Brett Favre story. You had some reservations with it. Do you have any regrets at all about being one of the people who helped to usher in this sort of new era of blogging? Do you think there are any negative aspects to it that you wish you could change or would change if you could?
Oh, there are negative aspects when I was doing it, and I think it's worth noting that the full quote in that piece is, I wouldn't have run the Favre story, but I would have never gotten the Favre story because I'm not that kind of I just don't care that much about athlete penis. Mm-hmm. And more accurately, page views, AJ has doubled the traffic from Deadspin when I've been doing it, and he had to, or Deadspin would no longer exist. I had the advantage of getting there first and being able to have this kind of quirky, cultish, fun little thing that looked at things differently, but never had to get huge. Mm. AJ has to keep that site huge,
of course.
And I would not if I would have not left Deadspin, I'd still been in charge of Deadspin. There would be no Deadspin. That's not what I do well. I don't care about that. I really don't care about scandal that much. I just don't. And so it would have made me a terrible person for that job. So I think, certainly there are times on Deadspin where I'll read something and be like, yeah, I don't know about that one. But that was the case when I was running Deadspin too. It's a hard job. Mm. And, and some things are going to hit and some things aren't. And so, and as for the Favre story, how anyone can argue that that's not in the public interest? This is a major American figure, putting aside just the sexual harassment.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
And to me, one thing I did want to do with Deadspin that AJ is definitely still doing with Deadspin is, you have to call out people. Like, that was one of the initial ideas of Deadspin was, you know, speak truth to power. You know, like, don't let, like, the whole idea, remember before, not just before Deadspin, but I think before blogs in a general way, people just got away with stuff. Like, they would just say something, and if the local reporter didn't write anything about it, nobody ever knew. So, like, you know, I think that was a founding principle of Deadspin in the first place. Uh-huh. So, certainly, AJ takes a different tack. He has a different tone. He does things that a way that are different than what I would do them. But that doesn't mean that I'm right, and it doesn't mean that he's wrong. You know, I think that it's just, and frankly, you know, if you look at the numbers on the sites, certainly more people, the stats and the audience would certainly argue that he's right. And I'm
wrong. It's kind of funny because we have all these different eras in sports, and the era in sports is kind of reflected in the era of sports writing. We had the steroid era, where we had this sort of outcry of sports writers against steroids. And we had, like, I don't know, I'm thinking of the Bad Boys era in the late 80s in basketball, and all these sports writers were like, whoa, we need to tone this game down, and eventually they sort of did. It's almost like we're entering sort of the redemption era of sports media, where a blog story about, like, Roethlisberger, not that Ben Roethlisberger not that what he did was broken by a blog, what he did was broken by the police department in Georgia. Or, you know, Michael Vick or Brett Favre or Mark Sanchez or whoever, and then they go out and they continue to play, and then everyone remembers that they're athletes and not really role models. They're not the president of the United States, and so they're redeemed. And I don't know, does that seem like something that happens to you? It seems like it happens on a monthly basis now.
Yeah, I certainly, you know, it's always so weird to me when people talk about how, like, some sort of age of sports journalism is over. That's like the literal opposite of what is happening. There is more journalism happening right now than there has been at any other time in American history, and in sports writing history, or any of it. So, like, the idea that, like, that's what, like, sure, I think that, like, kind of ivory tower academic journalism, I'm sure they're probably all very appalled by all these things that are happening. But, like, I think the average person is like, wow, I know so much more about sports now. Mm-hmm. I've so much more information than I used to. Mm-hmm. And that's, like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? That's why journalists exist, is to provide information to the public. So, you know, I think that whatever your tactics and all, there have always been, and also this notion of American journalism as this impartial, you know, very urbane, very safe type of thing. That's like maybe 30, 40 years old. Most of American history as journalism has not been like that at all. It's, you know, I mean, and listen, one of the things that they taught me in journalism school was, hey, don't kid yourself. Your stories are literally just filler between the ads. And they were right, but they seem to have forgotten that now, I think, when endangered. So certainly I think that I love the idea that we don't have that level of hero worship anymore. These are just human beings. It's healthier as a populace. It's healthier as sports fans. It's just a more logical, smarter way to look at sports. And so, yeah, it's encouraging for me to see that happen.
You don't run Deadspin anymore. You contribute a little bit. You're a highfalutin, you know, print journalist. You write for New York Magazine, and you're going to keep blogging for Yahoo. Do you miss being like the quirky, snarky foil to ESPN's self-appointed credibility, or do you like people actually like returning your phone calls?
They returned my phone calls before just as much as they do now. You know, I think that I haven't really changed. Like, one of the nice things about going to New York was that, you know, I'd written like 10 or 11 stories for New York Magazine while I was at Deadspin. Mm-hmm. Like, and I didn't like radically change my voice. They knew it. That's what they hired before. Like, they, you know, I think that the vision of Deadspin in its early days as this like anti-ESPN site, or just this thing that was flicking boogers on everything that mattered. Like, I think regular readers of the site at that time, certainly I don't think that's what the site was. I think that people that checked in every once in a while and just saw a salacious story or saw something controversial but didn't actually read the site regularly, they might have thought that this was just this snarky, mean, but like, that's not what the site was at all. And I think that regular readers of the site, which I think include the people, frankly, most of the people that I work for and write for now, they know what the site was, and they knew what my voice was, and they know what I do. So, you know, I think that I tell you, there's literally nothing. The only thing that has changed since I've left Deadspin with my working style and my writing style is Occasionally, I have to go in a locker room to interview an athlete, and that happens once every maybe 3 or 4 months. And I still think it's useless. I still think it's stupid. I still think that kind of structure is there. But I also write for a magazine. Sometimes they want quotes from someone other than me. So I think that I think that's reasonable, frankly. So I think that I really have not changed the way that I do anything at all, and I think that. The way that I did Deadspin is the way that I do stuff now. I really do. And I just think that the perception of Deadspin was they were nothing but drunk athlete photos, or they were nothing but look who's screwing who at ESPN. But that was totally not what the site was at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that regular readers of the site then knew that.
How do you feel about Julian Assange then, who's sort of you could say a blog. It is for geopolitics what Deadspin to some degree was for sports. He's publishing America's dong shots, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. Listen, this is what the press is supposed to do. And he's obnoxious and he's snooty and there's all kinds of personal things that I think people don't like about him. But I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. You mean I think that it's strange that. There was a great piece in Pointer about this a while back about the idea of how journalists treat their country, as if that the idea that journalists should be in charge of truth. That's our God, that's our country, and that's what it should be. And I think that's what theoretically it should. And I think and sometimes there are obvious arguments against that and obvious notions against that, but theoretically, that's what we constructed this as. Yeah. We are out for truth. No whether it's good or whether it's bad, whether it hurts or whether it doesn't hurt, that's supposed to be our driving force. Now, obviously, people are human beings and they make their own decisions and that we're I'm not just a journalist, I'm also an American, I'm also a voter, and so you're not just exclusively that, but that pure journalism that we've been talking about as the goal and the construct of what we want it to be the whole time, and what we should be thinking when we do this, that's Assange. Mm-hmm. That's what he is. He is. I don't care about what happens. I don't care about who this hurts. I don't care about any of that. My job is to provide truth, and that's what he does. And sometimes it hurts, and sometimes it stinks. And there are times I'll see something and I'm like, God, you dick! I don't you're hurting the world. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Almost break journalism to build it, sort of thing, in a bizarre way.
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure he's breaking journalism. I think it was already broken. And it's hard because we're human beings doing this, and I think he's been really good about being I am just sending out this information. They've actually been excellent about not seeming to have grudges that they go over. They're just here's the information. You gave it to us and here it is for the world. Yeah. They didn't, these people are not breaking into vaults and stealing secrets. They're getting them from the people inside. Blame them. Yeah. But the idea of blaming WikiLeaks and Assange for this has always been a little bewildering to me.
Before you take off, what film are you going to review again?
I'm going to review Just Go With It with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. So that's my journalism training right there.
So I imagine the first 6 rows are just going to be the New York media film elite, and then the back 6 rows are just going to be 15-year-old girls and boys making out.
I don't know who I'm not familiar with either one of those groups. So hopefully I'll be in the middle.
As a Cubs fan, I need to know who do you got coming out of the NL Central, and who do you got in the World Series?
I actually think the Cardinals are going to win the Central this year. I think the Reds are due for a regression. The Cubs are actually a little underrated. I always hate saying that, but I think they're a little better than people are giving them credit for. And I think the Brewers, the Brewers look good, but they're pencil thin, and their defense is horrible. So I like the Cardinals, but World Series, I gotta tell you, we're kind of due for a Red Sox year. So it kind of feels like a Red Sox year.
I agree. And I feel actually the same way about the Central. I got the Cardinals and the Reds and the Cubs kind of scraping it out. Maybe for a wild card spot, I think the Reds are going to take it. But that's just my 2 cents.
All right. Well. Hopefully we're both right.
Thanks a lot, Will.
Of course. Thanks, man.